Suck it up. Don't get mad. Get even. Don't let them see you cry. Do you want to be strong? Then get over it. Man up. These phrases can be commonplace in households as we're growing up and even as adults, and we do not even realize the impact they've had on the filter we see the world through. If we are raised to believe that strength only exists if you are acting like everything is okay, then it makes sense to also believe if we feel like everything is falling apart, we are weak. This is not true. Being sad, frustrated, hurt, lonely, confused, or overwhelmed does not mean you are weak. It means you're human. Trying to act like nothing bothers you, that the only option is to look at the silver lining, is to turn away from your humanity. Life is not black and white. There are many layers of gray. And in this episode, I want to talk a little bit more about a very heavy term that has strong polarity associated with it: toxic masculinity. So get comfortable as we maybe get a little uncomfortable today, and be very curious about your reactions to everything I say. When I was talking about this with my partner, he equated masculinity to men and was surprised when I talked about it as a trait that all of us have. Every single one of us have masculine and feminine qualities, and it's a good thing to have it all. It is a spectrum. For example, I was always more of a tomboy growing up. I have never been one for makeup. I love sports, and I grew up a little bit more masculine. But I also like to wear dresses. I love building deep connections with others. I have no problem asking for help, and I'm in touch with my emotions, or at least for the most part. I have both feminine and masculine traits that work together to determine how I show up in the world. We do not want one or the other. And if we decide we only need or have to have one type of trait, then we end up shunning a big part of who we are. So these traits, it's really how we think about and use them in our lives that determine if they will help or hurt us. So I do not want to talk about men or what's wrong with men or how men need to do better. That is not what the conversation of toxic masculinity is about. Every identity, not just men, can fall prey to toxic masculinity. It is something that can exist within all of us. Now, I will talk about men, as this topic can deeply affect that identity in particular, but this relates to all of us. And every one of us should be curious about how it shows up in our lives. My re-education on masculinity started with Liz Plank, both from her book For the Love of Men, A New Vision for Mindful Masculinity, and in her work with Justin Baldoni and Jamey Heath on the Man Enough podcast. This means that if anything I'm saying resonates with you today, I recommend using that curiosity to drive you towards these resources and learn more for yourself. This is a topic that has always been of interest to me, but it wasn't until recently that I started building the language to share my views with others. So my hope today is to answer the questions: what is toxic masculinity? Why does this conversation matter? How can it show up in our lives? And what can we do together to challenge this version of masculinity? So, what is it? According to the Greater Good magazine at Berkeley University, masculinity is seen as an overemphasis of highly masculine characteristics, such as self-reliance, stoicism, not wanting to show weakness, and an inability to show or share emotions. When these characteristics show up, people are less likely to lean on others, less likely to share when they're struggling, and have difficulty being vulnerable, especially around mental health. This can lead to angry outbursts, frustration, and even violence. In my last episode, I shared a metaphor of a hamburger, where all cheeseburgers are hamburgers, but not all hamburgers are cheeseburgers. All toxic masculinity is masculinity, but not all masculinity is toxic. Masculine traits are important within our society and should continue to exist. It is only when these characteristics become toxic that they start to cause distress. Toxic masculinity can show up in many different ways. The statements at the start of this episode being a few examples. It can also show up in physical behavior and how we try to communicate or don't communicate, and even in our perspectives of the world. The Anxiety and Depression Association of America, or the ADAA, share 3 core tenets of toxic masculinity: toughness, anti-femininity, and power. These 3 tenets form the idea of how manly someone is. Toughness can look like needing to be seen as strong. More aggressive behavior, such as talking over others, yelling, or refusing to share emotions, or even being hardened to the feelings and emotions of others. Other examples include being hyper-independent, dominant, or having violent outbursts, from throwing something across the room, to punching a wall, to physical altercations. Anti-femininity is this idea that anything feminine is bad, including having emotions, accepting help, and being domesticated by doing household chores or tasks traditionally done by women, like laundry, cooking, or helping with the kids. And within the 3rd tenet, power, comes this belief that you are only man enough if you have money, status, or influence. If you cannot command a room, you're not manly enough. And because of this, we see consistent issues where men typically talk over women and each other. They interrupt to make sure they are the ones being heard, that their ideas are the ones that must be chosen, or they're not influential or powerful enough, which of course means they've failed. Now, this is not my personal opinion. This is supported time and time again by research done on communication styles within groups, and it is a constant experience shared by minorities in the office space that they do not have a chance to use their voice. Now, being strong, having ambition, being able to command a room inherently are not bad things. But if you do it at the expense of your humanity or being able to connect and hear others, it will create conflict. Additionally, if accepting help is seen as feminine and therefore wrong, someone who has fallen victim to toxic masculinity might not be willing to receive support, take others' ideas into consideration, and can cause themselves physical and mental damage because of this belief that they have to ignore or push through their pain. These tenets can also affect connection in relationships. If you must have toughness, power, and see feminine traits as weak, then you will be more controlling in relationships. You might feel more entitled to being treated a certain way, even if you won't treat your partner with that same expectation. You might shut down your partner's views, ideas, and perspectives because you believe you must be right in order to provide properly. On the flip side, when someone is working on their journey and trying to challenge toxic beliefs, we can also start to notice others getting upset or telling us that we are weak by changing our patterns and being different. Liz Plank writes in her book, For the Love of Men, while we're comfortable with women existing outside the bounds of femininity, we're not comfortable with men existing beyond the bounds of masculinity. For example, if a man does the work, challenges his beliefs and gives himself permission to cry in front of his partner, there is a chance that change will be met with discomfort or apathy. They might be told that that's just not something they want to have to witness. This then enforces the idea that vulnerability is not safe. We all have toxic masculinity ideals inside of us. And we all need to challenge these deeply held beliefs of what makes someone a man. If you want to be masculine without being weakened by toxicity, be ambitious, aim to achieve high, want to support those you love, and be willing to accept help when help is there for you. Let others support you too, and work as a team so everyone can succeed. A quote that has stuck with me for years is, "Competition exists at the bottom. Support and celebration exist at the top." You do not need to do it alone or push others down in order to succeed. And as the ADAA says, no one is impressed by your exhaustion and stoic struggle. Help others and let others help you. Feel your feelings and let it be okay for others to emote. It is easy to push away and isolate. It keeps us safe. But if you truly want to be strong together. Time and time again, that connection is shown to make us healthier, live longer, and be happier. It takes strength to be authentic in your experience, especially the uncomfortable ones. And it takes strength to let others be themselves in their experiences. As Liz Plank writes, men and boys end up expressing more aggression because they lack the social permission to express their emotions in the first place. Give yourself and everyone around you permission to be human. And before I move on to the next idea, I want to give you one more quote from the book For the Love of Men. Real power doesn't come through coercion. It comes through deep understanding, compassionate leadership, and having a way to express a level of morality and ethics that makes you bigger than just a man. If we can allow masculinity to be mindful and true within our human experiences and challenge toxicity, then we can build connections, which again are proven to increase health and lifespans. We can show younger generations that having emotions is being human, instead of teaching young boys that if they have a feeling, they've already failed. We need to model what curiosity and understanding can look like in order to build a world of healthier individuals. So, how can we have curiosity in our conversations instead of defensiveness and the pressure to convince or coerce others to agree with us? Through intentional conversations. The goal of intentional conversations is to build curiosity, increase understanding, and slow down with each other. If we can slow down and allow for everything to be said, then we feel heard, validated, and it's easier to come to an understanding. Without this intention, we feel rushed, feel like we're alone in the fight, or feel pressure to figure it out by ourselves. This can also be caused by a need to problem solve or fix the solution before we understand where the other person is at. If we don't understand what's going on from every side, how can we know how to fix it? Suck it up comes to mind as a phrase I hear when someone is struggling and feels unheard. You're struggling with something? Well, just suck it up. Get over it. It'll work out. This leads to making assumptions about their experience, miscommunication because the other person feels shut down and doesn't want to share anymore. And eventually, feelings get hurt or fighting occurs. We want to take the guesswork out of our interactions, hence, intentional conversations. One thing that I always say is over-communicating is better than under-communicating. If you have a thought or a reaction, sharing it with your partner from a place of non-judgment and curiosity within your own experience makes it so they do not have to guess where you're at or what you need. If you are stuck in this pattern of under-communicating or trying to change it, it's common to feel like they just don't care, like nothing you do will matter, like it will never change. So what's even the point in trying? Well, you only have control over yourself, and it might take a while for your partner or friend to notice that you are responding differently. But if you stick with it, eventually they will see it, whether they accept it or not. That's a whole other story. But if you try it once, it doesn't work, and you go right back to the old way of communicating, then of course the pattern will never change because you've given up trying to change how you show up. Let's work through some examples. First, let's say two people just start hanging out, and partner A is by their phone all the time, ready to respond, and partner B takes longer than desired to text back. Very common experience. If partner A is trying to assume what's going on with partner B, they might think things like they don't care about me or they must not be interested. And yes, this might be true, but it could also be true that partner B is busy this week with work or keeps their phone on silent and away from them during the day and only checks it in the evenings. Unless we ask, we do not know. And we often feel like a bother if we try to check in. A check-in might look like, hey, I notice you take a long time to write back, and I'm wondering what's going on with that. I'd love some context. On the other side, partner B is under-communicating and might make assumptions that partner A is clingy or over the top or too much. And while partner A is completely justified in checking in and asking where partner B is at, if partner B makes the assumption that it's too much, well, there's a disconnect there. But if partner B is working on this skill of intentional conversations and challenging toxicity, they might say something early on in their conversations like, hey, I like hanging out with you, and so I want to warn you that I don't look at my phone during the day. It stresses me out to be on so many screens. I hope you understand. Or if they're not interested anymore, saying something like, I have been having fun with you so far, and I appreciate getting to know you, but I don't know if I want this to go any further. Thank you for the time we've spent together, and I wish you the best of luck. On both sides of this example, there is a way to make assumptions and guess the answer and the other person's experience, and there's a way to have an intentional conversation. Notice that at no point was either partner trying to force an answer, interrogate, or coerce the other to be a way other than how they are. It was plain and simple curiosity about where the other person was at and a willingness to accept them for where they are at. I often ask myself, what am I missing? Or what don't I know yet? If I were partner A, I don't know what's keeping partner B away from their phone. I don't know how they feel about technology, and I don't know how they feel about me. I would want to ask those questions and know about those answers before I made any assumptions. If I were partner B, I'd be curious about what is important to partner A about checking in so often. If they would be okay with less check-ins, or what kind of check-ins are they hoping for? If you're having a conversation with someone and you catch yourself saying or thinking, yep, I think we've covered it all, you are forgetting something. What did you miss? What don't you know? Even ending a conversation with, hey, I just want to check in and see if there's anything else on your mind that we didn't talk about or I forgot to ask about. Something as simple as that leaves space for curiosity. If you decide to try this and start over communicating, it might feel weird because in your brain you're going, I'm over communicating. But over time, it'll feel more natural. And instead of over communicating, you're really just communicating with your partner or your friend. For some reason, we often believe the assumption that if you really cared, you'd already know the answer. Well, how can you know the answer to everything? What if the truth is actually the opposite? What if you really cared, you'd want to check in and see if your guess, your assumption, is the answer? And if you guess wrong, can you hear what the right answer is? Are you willing to take on and accept that influence from your partner? Let's run through another example. Let's say partner A is trying to think of a gift for partner B's birthday. Partner B loves experiences, and partner A knows this, but cannot remember what type of experience they truly enjoy. Going to a museum, a sports game, a river cruise? In the belief that if you really cared, you'd already know the answer, partner A would guess which experience to buy. It is a test of how well did you listen. Now, sometimes you're going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. And sometimes you will buy them a gift that is actually closer to what you like instead of what they wanted. This is called egocentric bias, which is our tendency to only see things from our perspectives and thinking we're seeing it from others. So, for example, saying, I like Italian, so I'm going to buy them a fancy dining experience at an Italian restaurant, when partner B really likes burgers and barbecue. Or, my favorite team is playing this week, so I'm going to splurge and get us amazing courtside tickets, when partner B would much prefer going to a comedy show. Now, if partner A was going to have an intentional conversation, they could check in with partner B months in advance and say, hey, I want to get you an experience for your birthday this year. I have some ideas, but wanted to see if something specific was exciting for you. It's your birthday, and I want you to feel special. This gives partner B a chance to say, yes, I want to go to Wicked at the Performing Arts Center this year. Or no, actually, I would love for you to surprise me. I will be happy with anything as long as we're together. Now, if partner B says the latter, but in their head is thinking, and you better be getting me those Wicked tickets, well, they're expecting partner A to read their mind and will be upset if they open tickets to a basketball game. If both parties are over communicating and having intentional conversations, and partner B says, I want you to surprise me, I'm going to be happy with anything, then if they get those basketball tickets, they'll still have fun because they are with their partner who planned the whole night just like they asked. Now, partner A in this example put forth the effort to check in and have that intentional conversation. But this can also go the other way around. So if partner B knows they want to go see Wicked, explicitly telling partner A, this is what I want. Do this for me. And then partner A knows exactly which experience to buy. But that also means that if partner A doesn't buy Wicked tickets, after hearing partner B explicitly say, this is the experience I want, then partner A is struggling to take influence from their partner. They're not listening to their ideas. They probably have some egocentric bias going on and probably feel like they need to make the decision as the provider of the gift, which in some form is toxic masculinity, which we are trying to challenge. Both parties have to work on this together. Because if one partner starts trying and the other doesn't eventually catch up, then one partner will be working on hearing and validating and paying attention and checking in curiously. And that same partner will continue to feel unheard. This, over time, can also lead to animosity and hurt feelings. We want to avoid this. So if you are listening to this podcast today, start by introducing the idea of intentional conversations and curiosity, and let your partner or friend or family member know that you're not going to get it right every time and you're still figuring it out, but you plan to start working on it and you hope that they want to start working on it too. What this starter conversation does is gives us permission to be human and say the wrong thing or mess up, but then be able to talk about it and figure out what went wrong, why that response wasn't what they were expecting, and how they can do it differently. As another example, let's say I bought you a pasta making experience and you hate pasta. Yep, okay, I see what I did wrong there. I will remember this for next time. And if your partner has told you 100 times that they don't eat pasta and you still buy them a pasta making experience for their birthday, do you actually pay attention when they talk? Do you want to be in this relationship? Have you figured out what you don't know about yourself yet there? What are you missing? Because if you get it that wrong and your partner has told you so many times that that is the wrong gift choice, you are only paying attention to your own experience. And maybe you're trying to decide who your partner is instead of actually seeing them for who they are. Be curious about that. I want to end by emphasizing that this is not easy. Breaking patterns like this can be challenging and feel harder before it gets easier. And if you are trying this and giving your partner that you're trying to communicate with more space, that does not mean that you have to get smaller. The goal is to slow the conversation down enough that everyone can take up space. If we slow down and build curiosity, we no longer feel rushed or believe that we won't get a chance to say our perspective. If we're not trying to problem solve right away, then we don't have to interrupt or talk over each other to make sure everyone's idea has a chance to be heard, because everybody's trying to hear. Again, this is challenging, and it will take practice and an understanding that we will not get it right every time. But if we can work to understand each person's perspective and their reaction to an experience, then maybe, just maybe, all of us can feel heard. And at the end of the day, at least in my experience, we all want to be seen, and we all want to feel like we are enough. But we are so focused on trying to be heard that we forget to hear. And if no one is listening to understand, only fighting for their chance to speak, none of us are going to be heard. I want to help you be seen and let it be okay to see others. You are enough in your accomplishments, in your achievements, and in all your messy feelings and discomfort. You are enough. And your experience is valid, even if it doesn't match up with others. Your perspective deserves to be seen, but not at the expense of another person. There is room for all of us. We do not have to fight for the light. And this challenge exists across all genders and identities. This is not just about men. This is about changing the dynamic of our connections with any and all humans. If we can try to understand their experience, there will be connection everywhere. This is about finding the curiosity and having intentional conversations to understand each other's inner worlds. In the future, I hope to talk more about curiosity, intentional conversations, and being flexible when what you thought does not match up with what actually happened. But for now, let's slow it down and start with this simple idea. Over-communicating is better than under-communicating. Stop trying to assume that you know the answer or your partner will be able to guess the answer, and instead, just tell them. It will make life easier for everyone involved, and it will increase your insight within yourself and those around you that you love. Give yourself permission to be human. Hopefully, something we talked about today resonated with you. If it did, let yourself sit with that idea for a little while longer. And if you have any questions for this podcast or any themes you'd like us to focus on in the future, send us a message on Instagram at insightswithuspodcast or send us an email at insightswithus@gmail.com. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to hear more, please follow, like, or subscribe. I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you are listening. Thank you for creating Insight with Us.